today we're going to see that sometimes Hesed actually isn't always a good thing. So let's talk about that.
Welcome back to Now Let's Be Honest. We are at part 7 of our Hesed series.
Yeah.
For people that have not joined, you can go back and watch some of our old videos. We've been going for a while now. We did a very introduction video where we kind of talked about what Hesed is and kind of what the series is going to be. But if not, welcome back. We are now in Leviticus
yes.
and Numbers.
Yeah, guess what, guys? We are actually going to be covering 2 whole books today.
Yes!
We are trucking along.
But 2 of the occurrences are verses back to back, so don't get too excited.
Back off.
But if you want access to any of the slides that we use, you can go to nowletsbehonest.com/resources. And if you want to support us on Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/David Tate.
Yes, you can. And I will just give you a forewarning that both Brianne and I have recently had some Dr. Pepper. So we got Dr. Pepper in our system, and so if we're in a bit of a weird mood today,
we're a little giggly.
We're a little giggly. That's because we really like Dr. Pepper.
It's great.
Also, just a fun fact that you probably won't care about, but because I got Dr. Pepper in my system, I'm going to share it anyways. We are filming this video on the same day as we filmed the last video in the series.
Yeah.
We've got a hectic next few weeks coming up where she's going to be out of town for a week, I'm going to be out of town for a week, and so we just had to knock out these videos, and we're actually going to try to film the next video in the series in just a few days. And so, just so in case you wanted to know that... There you have it. But, all right, will you pray for us real quick, and then we will hop into Leviticus and Numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Lord, we thank you so much for this time that you've given us, for allowing us to gather here, even over this media platform, to be able to talk and read your word that you've revealed to us. Lord, I pray that as we go into this study, that we open our hearts and we open our minds to the wisdom that you have for us, and that we listen to your guidance throughout it. I pray that our actions and our thoughts are glorifying to you, and that you guide our words throughout this entire study, and to allow us to leave changed after participating in this study, Lord. It's in your name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Okay, so here we go. As you can see, I've got this section headed up as Hesed in Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, and that's because Hesed actually does not show up that much in the rest of the law.
Yeah.
Hesed showed up 11 times in Genesis by itself.
Lots of times.
4 times in Exodus, and then it shows up a total of 6 times in all of Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. It shows up once in Leviticus, twice in Numbers, and then 3 times in Deuteronomy. So the way we're going to do this is we're splitting it up. We are going to cover Leviticus and Numbers today, and then we're going to hop into Deuteronomy for the next week.
Yep.
And then we're going to take a break from this series, and we're going to go back to my prophet series, which unfortunately does not include Brianne.
I know.
But we'll have her back in a
here.
little bit, probably sooner rather than later, just because I'm not as ahead on the prophet series as I would like to be, and so we'll probably be coming back to this fairly quickly. But that being said, Brianne, can you give us a little bit of a recap in regards to just the storyline of the Bible getting us to Leviticus, right? You can just take us as far as you want. If you want to just go through Genesis, take us through there, then I can pick up in Exodus, or whatever you want. Just take it away, and then I'll pick up where you leave off.
Okay, sounds good. So we start off in Genesis. There's this great big God of the universe who's creator of all things. He creates man and places him in this garden. Unfortunately, man chooses to sin, and so he falls away from God. He's kicked out of the garden. But God says that he's going to have this promised seed that is going to allow God to dwell with man again. So as we're working our way through Genesis and really through the entire Bible, we're looking for this promised seed. Who is going to be this person who is going to be the redeeming person for all people? And so we see people multiplying, being fruitful, and basically keeping God's commands of what he said from the garden. And eventually we get to this guy named Abraham, and that is the person who God chooses that he is going to have the promised seed through, and eventually that's going to lead to the Israelites. And so through Genesis, we're tracking from Abraham and Isaac and Jacob all the way through until we get to Exodus. We are now at the point where we have all 12 tribes of Israel. They are in Egypt, and they're being enslaved by the Egyptians. Did you want to pick up in Exodus?
Sure, yes,
Go
I
ahead.
can do that. Okay, yeah, so Exodus picks up, and the people of Israel have multiplied like crazy, but the issue is that they're not dwelling in the land that God gave them, and also they've become enslaved. And so what God does is he decides to appoint a deliverer to go in and take the people out of Egypt. And this guy's name is Moses. His story is a fascinating one, and he is, traditionally speaking, the author of the first 5 books, right? I mean, obviously, it seems like maybe later on somebody came in and like had to, help close the book off, but Moses is the author of the Torah, right? He is the lawgiver. And we meet him in the book of Exodus. He's the one who goes into Israel. He takes the people out by the power of God, and he brings them to Mount Sinai. And whenever we're at Mount Sinai through most of Exodus, all of Leviticus, and most of Numbers.
Yeah.
And then, just to kind of let you know where we're heading with this, halfway through Numbers, God says, okay, it's time to pick up, we're leaving, and he's going to bring them to the Promised Land. But the issue is that they rebel against God, and because they rebel against him, and because they are ungrateful, and because they're sinning against God, he ends up punishing them by saying, you're going to spend 40 years in the wilderness, and then your children will go into the Promised Land, right? And even Moses himself is not going to get in, and that really is the last half of Numbers and Deuteronomy. Yeah. Deuteronomy, the word literally just means like second law, right? Yeah. Deutero is second, Nomos is law. Deuteronomy is the second law. This is where Moses stands before the people, and he's going to be like, hey guys, I'm about to die. Yeah. And y'all are about to head into the Promised Land, and so he's reissuing the law to the second generation, right? And so that's really where we're at for these 3 books. Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy is basically just Moses giving the people the law, and where we're going to first start out at, in Leviticus, is really the book that probably goes down to most people as the law book, right? When you read Leviticus, there's not really an overarching narrative. There's really only like 2 narrative stories in the entire book of Leviticus. There's like the part where Nadab and Abihu die, and then there's another part where some people come up and they're asking for land, right? And so other than that, Leviticus is basically just a book about laws, right? And so we would probably expect that Hesed's not going to show up here a whole lot because we're not talking about people's characteristics or how people interact with one another. We're predominantly just talking about how to be a decent human being, and specifically what is going to set Israel apart from everybody else. And so that leads us into our discussion today, right? Like I said, Hesed appears 6 times in the rest of the Torah, right? It shows up once in Leviticus chapter 20, twice in Numbers chapter 14, and we're going to cover those 3 instances today. And if you were with us in the last video covering Exodus 34, that's going to make this a lot easier because Numbers chapter 14 is by and large restating what we already talked about in Exodus chapter 34. And whenever we get into Deuteronomy, next week, it's actually going to be very similar because there's going to be some places where we're actually restating what we already covered in Exodus, and that's just going to make this whole discussion go a lot easier, and so I would highly encourage you to go check those out. I actually really enjoyed our discussion over Exodus 34. We spent an entire video there, and so please just go watch that one. I think it's probably the most crucial occurrence of Hesed in the entire Bible, possibly. Just maybe not in the entire Bible, but at least when it comes to establishing what Hesed is. And so... You were going to say something?
Oh, I was going to say, and just so you know, kind of the occurrences of Hesed that we've seen so far, a lot of the ones in Genesis that we've seen are interpersonal relationships with people. It's between husband and wife, between man and man. But once we get to Exodus, that's whenever we're going to see a lot more of interaction between man and God, and who God is and his, central characteristics. So it's a little bit different occurrences, and we're kind of just seeing how it's evolving as we move on through each book.
And we see how really... In Exodus, that's where God establishes this is probably one of my key attributes, right? That's what we saw in Exodus 34. He's like, I am a God of Hesed. And so then you go back through Genesis and Exodus, and you're seeing how he is that God. And the way Exodus ends is that God literally comes to dwell with man once again, not as intimately as he did in the Garden of Eden, but in a pretty intimate manner, right? He is dwelling in a tent in the center of the camp of all Israel. And in order for this to happen, and in order for God to stay with them, there's going to be laws that they have to follow. They're going to have to be holy, and they're going to have to be clean, right? They have to set themselves apart from the nations, and they have to set themselves apart unto God in order for them to be able to make this whole thing work out. If they want to truly make this God-man relationship thing work, they're going to have to follow these laws. That leads us to Leviticus chapter 20. And good thing for us, we get to go into one of the most awkward chapters in all of Leviticus, because this is the sexual prohibition chapter. And I don't know who all's watching this video, but if you typically watch these videos with your kid, maybe watch this video ahead of time, because I don't know right now what all we're going to get into here, because I don't know how in depth we're going to go, but there's a possibility that we might have to discuss some stuff here that, it's talking about sexual prohibitions, and, Leviticus, I mean, really, the Bible is not a PG book. No, it's not a PG-13 book either. It is a book that it talks about real stuff, and it doesn't hide away from it like a lot of times Christians do. And so I don't know where this discussion will lead, but maybe just watch this ahead of time before you show it to a kid or something like that. Or just show it to them, because our goal is we're not going to be profane here.
No.
We're just going to try to honor God's word, and so if you think the kid can handle that, that's totally fine. Just wanted to give that as a little heads up there.
Yeah.
And, so we're going on here on the screen. I started in Leviticus chapter 20, verse 17. But just to give us some more context here, I am going to just start reading from my Bible, starting in verse 9. But really, there's not going to be a lot of context influence here, because it's literally just a list of prohibitions, right? But I will start by reading verses 9 through 16, and then I'll start reading off the screen as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what we read. If anyone curses his father or mother, he must be put to death. He has cursed his father or mother. His blood guilt is on himself. If a man commits adultery with his neighbor's wife, both the adulterer and the adulteress must be put to death. If a man goes to bed with his father's wife, he has exposed his father's nakedness. Both of them must be put to death. Their blood guilt is on themselves. If a man goes to bed with his daughter-in-law, both of them must be put to death. They have committed perversion. Their blood guilt is on themselves. If a man goes to bed with a male, as one goes to bed with a woman, the two of them have committed an abomination. They must be put to death. Their blood guilt is on themselves. If a man has marital relationships with both a woman and her mother, it is lewdness. Both he and they must be burned to death, so there is no lewdness in your midst. If a man has sexual relations with any animal, he must be put to death, and you must kill the animal. If a woman approaches any animal to copulate with it, you must kill the woman, and the animal must be put to death. Their blood guilt is on themselves. I probably just need to throw this out there and just kind of talk about what everybody's probably thinking at this point. These are harsh, right? These are harsh laws, and I think naturally when people read these are the things that people go to try to wag a finger at the God of Israel and say, look how harsh this guy is, look how evil the God of the Old Testament is. And I would just start off this video by telling you, if you're the type of person who thinks that, this is not probably going to be the video for you. Because it is my understanding that the God of Israel is the one true God, and he is the standard bearer of righteousness. And so whatever he says, I agree, goes. The reason why we do not go around killing people who commit adultery nowadays is not because we think God was wrong here. It's because we believe that these laws were for specific people at a specific time period. And so I would agree that the moral standards that God is saying here are true. But the punishment is different because we don't live under a theocracy. We live in a different situation, and even in this time period, they could choose to show somebody grace. Right. God is just saying what is allowable here, right? And so I just want to specify that right off the bat, because a lot of people will jump to stuff like this and say, whoa, this is harsh. You're saying you need to kill somebody for adultery? Well, these are the people of Israel, and their singular goal is to be set apart. And so, if they are living in sin, God says, yes, you're going to have more extreme punishments for these people because they're supposed to be set apart, right? Just like we would be stricter on ourselves as Christians than we should be on non-Christians. Same thing's happening here, but this is a community who is doing so by law, right? And so I'm just going to throw that out there. If you're going to try to accuse God of being bad, really study the context first. But I'm still going to not deny it. These are harsh rules.
Yes. Yeah.
But this is all setting up what we're going to get to with Hesed here in verse 17. And what I think is interesting about how we're going to see Hesed here is it's one of the few times where we actually see that Hesed is something that can be bad, right? Hesed does not always have to be a good thing. Hesed, as we've talked about, is really one of the key attributes of Hesed is the unexpectedness of it, and the fact that you have no right to expect something from somebody. It's really you giving something to somebody that they don't deserve. And typically the Bible frames Hesed in a positive light because it's God giving grace to people who deserve punishment. But there can be the reverse of that. And sometimes somebody can wrong somebody who deserves to have something right done to them. And this is one of those instances here. And so we move on to this part right here, and I'm going to read it, and then I'll hand it over to you to just let you kind of give some of your reflections.
Yeah.
Okay. If a man has marital relations with his sister, whether the daughter of his father or his mother, so that he sees her nakedness and she sees his nakedness, it is a Hesed. They must be cut off in the sight of the children of their people. He has exposed his sister's nakedness. He will bear his punishment for iniquity. If a man goes to bed with a menstruating woman and uncovers her nakedness, he has laid bare her fountain of blood, and she has exposed the fountain of her blood, so both of them must be cut off from the midst of their people. You must not expose the nakedness of your mother's sister or your father's sister, for such a person has exposed his own close relative. They must bear their punishment for iniquity. If a man goes to bed with his aunt, he has exposed his uncle's nakedness. They must bear responsibility for their sin. They will die childless. If a man has marital relations with his brother's wife, it is indecency. He has exposed his brother's nakedness. They will be childless. And so we're not going to walk through every single one of these and talk about that, because that's really not important here, to us right here. The benefit of studying this right here is that these are laws, and so you can really take a lot of these in isolation to figure out what's being discussed.
Right.
But before I say anything, what are your general thoughts about this?
Yeah. So, first of all, this situation is definitely very sad. But also, going back to Michael Card's definition of what Hesed is, it's when someone who you should expect nothing from gives you everything, right? Yeah. So if we're looking at this specific situation, someone's sister, a man's sister, would have no reason to expect those relations with him. But yet he gives it to her. So we see how it's still using the correct, like, it's still using the definition of what Hesed is.
Well, you can see why he defines it that way.
Yeah, it holds up with the definition. That's just an incorrect way of using it, or a negative way of using it. I guess that's a better term to say. But it still holds up to the definition.
Yeah. And we've seen this back in Genesis, right?
We've seen with like Lot and Sarah.
Yeah, we see that there is a tendency for humans to abuse Hesed and to misuse it, right? And that, I think, is why it's important for us to see these negative instances of it. Because we see that Hesed does not have to be good. Hesed can be bad, and when entrusted to humans, oftentimes we do use it in bad ways. We are very prone to giving people things that they have no right to expect from us in a very negative sense. And we see that right here, and we're going to break down verse 17 a little bit more in depth. We're not going to break down all of this. I really just quoted a lot of it to show you that this all falls in the context of negative things, so that we didn't mistakenly think that Hesed here was a positive thing.
Yeah, it's surrounded.
Yes. All of the other things are clearly negative, and so we know that Hesed here should be translated as a negative thing. That's why I read the entire context, just to make that clear. But whenever it's entrusted to humans, we do typically abuse this and misuse it, right? We do both of those two things. And that's why it makes it so amazing that God is a God of Hesed. Because he makes this thing that can be so easily abused and misused as one of his core attributes, knowing that humans can misuse and abuse it. And I think that's really crucial about understanding who God is. Because God is not afraid of us misusing and abusing his grace. He totally allows that to be possible, because the thing is, we're the ones who miss out. If we do that, right? God is still going to receive glory. He's still going to be enthroned. And if we want to abuse his grace, okay, we're going to be the ones who pay for that, right? And so God's totally going to allow that to happen. But he also is a God of emet, right? A God of faithfulness and truth. And so he does have a standard, and so he will punish you for that. And so let's actually walk through this. I really do like, I just want to say this, the English translation here, I like that it's translated as disgrace.
Right? It's using the root word of grace.
Well, yeah, because grace is... like, really, when it comes to the English word grace, I think that is probably the closest when it comes to our understanding of Hesed. Like, the theological concept of grace, not how we use it in broader culture, but whenever we talk about the theological concept of grace, it's all about giving something to somebody that they don't deserve. Right? And so, grace, we typically view in a positive sense, and it's all about receiving something you don't deserve. Well, a disgrace would be a opposite of grace,
a negative connotation,
which would be literally this, right? So it'd be grace, but the negative version of it. And so I actually do like that they translated it like this, just because it's like, I mean, it's literally like the word grace is still there, but it's the negative version of grace. And so that's a fair translation, I think. Okay, so if a man has marital relations with a sister, okay, I just also want to point this out. did you ever think the day would come whenever you would click on a Now Let's Be Honest video
Yeah.
and be doing an in-depth analysis of Leviticus chapter 20? I can guarantee you when we started this channel, I did not expect that.
Probably
but
not.
There you go. If a man has marital relations with his sister, whether the daughter of his father or his mother, right? And so this is talking about, it's not just a full-blooded sister. This is also talking about step-siblings as well, right? It doesn't have to just be, full-fledged.
Like
It can be,
yeah.
if there's been other marriages and stuff, this applies to full siblings, step-siblings, anything like that.
Yeah.
If a man has marital relations with a sister, so that he sees her nakedness and she sees his nakedness, and obviously sees nakedness here is not just a reference to physically seeing the nakedness. It goes beyond that, right? Mm-hmm. The seeing of the nakedness implies actual marital relations, yeah. Right? And if that happens, right? If two siblings come together in this way that is reserved for marriage, it is a Hesed. Mm-hmm. That should kind of shock us. Yeah. Just because every other occurrence of Hesed so far has been positive-ish, right? I mean, we have seen the times where...
We haven't seen anything like this extreme yet.
Yes, we've seen the places where it is abused and misused, but they've been viewing it at least in a positive sense, right? Like whenever Abraham was turning to Sarah and said, show me Hesed, he viewed Hesed in a positive way, right? He was just misusing it.
Yeah, yeah.
Right here, we actually see Hesed being employed in a negative sense, which should kind of throw us off, because we're like, whoa, we're used to seeing Hesed in a good way. And I think that's why Michael Card's definition becomes so useful. Right. Because if we only view Hesed in a positive light, you're like,
this doesn't fit.
That does not seem like Hesed. Good job. You did that with your sister. What?
Yeah,
Wait, you did what? Yeah, no, this is clearly negative, and if you keep reading, you'll see that. They must be cut off in the sight of the children of their people. So obviously, the author of Leviticus is not suggesting this is positive, and so if you had no idea what Hesed is, in this instance, you have to come to the conclusion that it is a negative thing. Yeah. And that's why his definition is so useful, right? Because it's saying, okay, it's not about it being good or bad, it's about you giving something to somebody that they have no right to expect, and they might have reason to expect the opposite. Right? So if you're the sister in this situation, you should not expect your brother to do this with you, and in fact you have the right to expect that he would not do this with you, because y'all are siblings, right? And so I think that's really what it's getting at here, and I think that uses like this are really good at helping us refine our definition of the term, right? Because if you only encounter the term in a positive sense, you might have a specific definition of it that's very positive. Right. But whenever you see it used in both ways, you have to say, okay, what's the common denominator? How can God be a God of Hesed, but then this is an act of Hesed? You're like, okay, we need to check our definition of Hesed. Loving kindness? Well, maybe that's not the best definition. Yeah. Because you're not going to translate this as loving kindness, right? If you go sleep with your sister, that's a loving kindness. Oh, no. Yeah. If you go sleep with your sister, that's a covenantal love. Okay. If you go sleep with your sister, you are showing her mercy. You don't like any of those, right? Yeah. Because that's not good. And that's why I really wish that we would just translate the term as Hesed. Because if you trace all of them, then you're forced to come up with a definition. And this is one of those places where we're getting a little bit more into the weeds, and I'm not focusing as much on the text itself as I am on the definition of the term. Right. But that's because that's the whole goal of the series, right? Really, our goal in this series, and we said this from the beginning, is we're trying to figure out what this word really is. And I think Michael Card is onto something. That's why I keep referencing his book. There's a few different books on Hesed. I think his is the best because I like his definition. It seems to most line up with what the word is. It's about receiving something from somebody that you have no right to expect. And I don't even think he goes into the negative instances here.
No, but it holds up.
No, it does hold up because you really do need both sides of it, right? You can't translate this as loving kindness, steadfast love, covenantal love, all the positive words that Hesed is typically translated as. It does not work here because this is a negative instance of it. And you just have to compare it to other stuff. Other stuff is called an abomination. They're called iniquity. It's called, one of the ones I really liked, lewdness. I was like, yeah, that's a good word. These are all negative things, and then it's called Hesed. And you're like, whoa. Yikes, what do we do with that? I thought Hesed was good. Well, that's because you didn't have the proper definition of it. And so the more times you encounter the word, the more fleshed out this concept and this really theology of Hesed is becoming, and it allows you to go back to previous instances and read it into that.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you're just viewing Hesed as a positive thing that grants all your wishes and makes them all come true,
right,
you're going to be really confused when you get to verse 17. But when you get to verse 17 and that refines your view of Hesed, then you once again can go back to all the previous instances and be like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it. Oh, so whenever God says that he is a God of Hesed, that's not necessarily just talking about positive things. You have to read that in light of all the other things God says, and those are all positive, right? So he is a positive version of Hesed. This is a negative version.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that was a lot to say. Do you have anything else to add to this specific conversation?
I'd say just like a lot of other occurrences, especially the last video we did in Exodus, whenever we see the word Hesed, how we see like negative things surrounding this, if you go back to a lot of the other occurrences, you see favor, graciousness, mercy, love. You see those things surrounding that word. So you're like, okay, you see it building up as you come to the word Hesed actually occurring in the text, which gives you kind of context of the way it's being used.
Yeah.
And then I also think that this occurrence is so shocking is because the last occurrence that we had of Hesed is whenever God is revealing himself of like that being his characteristic, and now you're reading along and the next thing you see is a negative connotation. You're like, whoa, like what is this? What's going on? So it's interesting to see that like that's the next one. But also, again, we kind of talked about it. It highlights how amazing God is and his like tension between Hesed and Emet, and that there's standards, but he also has this like gracious, loving heart at the same time.
Well, it is a very interesting contrast because I would say Exodus 34 is probably the heights of the heights when it comes to demonstrating the goodness of Hesed, and this is probably the worst that it gets when it comes to the badness and the lewdness of Hesed. Which is interesting because I think that Hesed only shows up negatively maybe like 2 or 3 times in the entire Old Testament.
I think so.
I think it's this place right here, and then I think it's like once or twice maybe in Proverbs. And other than that, they're all positive. And all you have to do is look at the context to make it clear, yes, these are negative.
Yeah.
But I just think that's very interesting. And this kind of made me think of a kind of funny, maybe a joke that people won't like, but I'm going to say it anyways, because why not? So in Exodus 34, God revealed himself as a God of Hesed. And right here in Leviticus, the brother revealed himself in a very negative sense as a person of Hesed. So that was as crass as my jokes are going to get on this YouTube channel, but you said revealed himself, and I was like, well, that was just a joke, like setting itself up right there. Because in Exodus 34, God is revealing himself in, like, not a dirty manner, in a very beautiful, amazing manner. Like, he's literally passing before Moses, and it's amazing.
Right.
And this is, like, literally polar opposite, like, so very dark comedy. I had to throw it in there, though, because the joke presented its opportunity. But what do you say we move out of this negative instance and move to something more positive?
I think so.
All right.
Let's do it.
Let's go to Numbers chapter 14, and we are going to cover a little bit more context here, but you actually looked through this ahead of time. Right? And so what I'm going to have you do is maybe just give us a little bit of a recap of Numbers, because pretty much I'm going into these videos a little bit blind, right? I mean, I made all these slides and I put that all together, but I'm not really even reading through it that much. I have read through this stuff before, but I am very rusty on Numbers. I have been studying Genesis and Exodus a whole lot lately, but Numbers, I'm not going to lie, I have studied it so many times, yet this is the book that I always just forget stuff in it. And so maybe you could give us a little bit of a recap of what's going on in Numbers at this time period to just set up what's coming next.
So some important people to know is obviously Moses. He's the chosen person that's leading the Israelites. And now in this passage specifically, we're introduced to Aaron. So Aaron and his sons, they've been established as being the people of the priesthood. So they're the ones that are going to give sacrifices. They're the ones that are able to go into the tabernacle, things like that. And so they are kind of hand in hand, kind of leading the Israelites. Moses kind of needs Aaron. Aaron needs Moses. They're kind of tag teaming it. And we see specifically here and multiple times throughout Numbers where we see the Israelites kind of falling away, and they keep complaining to Moses and Aaron about different things, that they want to go back to Egypt, that, we had food back in Egypt, did you really lead us out here just to die? They say things like that. And so now we're at this point where they're complaining, and God is going to hear this, and he is going to talk to Moses and Aaron about it, and they're going to have an interesting interaction where Moses is actually going to kind of appeal to God's glory, and we're going to have kind of a flashback talking about the beginning of Exodus when he like took them out of Egypt with all of the plagues. And kind of revealed himself in the first kind of huge public manner. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I've just been flipping through my little Hesed Bible here, and this is a very key moment.
Yeah,
man,
it is.
Yeah, this is, so Numbers chapter 12, that is where Miriam, who is Moses' sister, and Aaron, so Moses' two siblings, they oppose Moses, and they start thinking, who does this hotshot think he is? He just sits around writing the Bible and talking with God. Yeah. We could lead like him, and God's not happy with that. And so God punishes them. Yeah. And then chapter 13, that's whenever the spies are sent out. That's whenever, like, the 12 spies are sent into the land of Canaan to report on the land and what it's like. And 12 are sent out, and only 2 come back saying positive things. Yeah. And that's Joshua, son of Nun, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, or whatever his last name is. Yeah. So 10 spies say, we can't make it. And 2 spies say we can. And those 2 are going to be the only ones who go into the promised land. Yeah, and so that's a big moment. And this is going to lead to the moment where God literally says, you're stuck here in the wilderness. And that might be in this chapter right here. I'm not sure. I guess we'll have to see. But yeah, so this is a very big moment. Like, this is one of the hinge points of the book of Numbers. And I don't think we should be surprised that Hesed shows up.
Yeah. Also, if we're talking about kind of character arcs, which we always end up introducing that into all of our videos, because I think both of us really like character arcs. But this is another big moment for Moses. We talked about this in our last video on Exodus 34. This is another big moment for Moses too. He looks pretty good in this part. So
I gotta say a joke.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, Brienne, do you know who the most well-rounded character in the Bible is?
Who is it?
Noah. He had the biggest arc. Okay, there's the Dr. Pepper talking. We actually heard that joke earlier today. And
it was a little different.
It was a little bit different. I perfected it.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Let's go through this. Okay, Numbers chapter 14. I need to stop clapping. I'm clapping again. Okay, this Dr. Pepper, guys. I'm telling you.
Sorry for everyone wearing earphones. Your hands are like right next to them.
Yeah, wake up. It was to keep them awake so they don't fall asleep. Maybe Leviticus put them to sleep.
That's true.
Hopefully Numbers won't. We're going to make it exciting for you.
No, this one's going to be good.
Okay. Numbers chapter 14. I'll read this first slide and then be ready to talk. Okay, people are always complaining. They're always saying, like, David, you talk so much. Let Brienne talk. And I'm like, I want to let you talk. Yeah. But
I try and balance it out. I talk more than I used to.
Yeah. And also, hey, this is my channel. I can talk as much as I want. Help back off. But okay. Your voice is sweet and your face is lovely. So I'll let you talk some more. Okay. Then all the community raised a loud cry, and the people wept that night. And all the Israelites murmured against Moses and Aaron, and the whole congregation said to them, if only we had died in the land of Egypt, or if only we had perished in the wilderness. Why has the Lord brought us into this land only to be killed by the sword, that our wives and our children should become plunder? Wouldn't it be better for us to return to Egypt? So they said to one another, let's appoint a leader and return to Egypt. Then Moses and Aaron fell down with their faces to the ground before the whole assembled community of the Israelites. And Joshua, son of Nun, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, 2 of those who had investigated the land, tore their garments. They said to the whole community of the Israelites, the land we passed through to investigate is an exceedingly good land. If the Lord delights in us, then he will bring us into this land and give it to us, a land that is flowing with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not fear the people of the land, for they are bread for us. Their protection has turned aside from them, but the Lord is with us. Do not fear them. However, the whole community threatened to stone them, but the glory of the Lord appeared to all the Israelites at the tent of meeting. The Lord said to Moses, how long will this people despise me? And how long will they not believe in me in spite of the signs that I have done among them? I will strike them with pestilence, and I will disinherit them. I will make you into a nation that is greater and mightier than they. There you go. That was my attempt at doing a more dramatic reading of the Bible. Was that good?
That was good.
Okay,
that was pretty good. I felt it.
Sweet, thank you. Appreciate that. All right. What do you think about that?
I just want to say, anytime that I read, wouldn't it be better for us to return to Egypt? I just think of that one Keith Green song.
Keith Green song?
Yeah. If anyone hasn't listened, you should go listen to it. Egypt. It's a great song. It's based off of like this stuff.
Yes.
But yeah, the Israelites are not coming out too well. But Moses and Aaron and Joshua and Caleb, they're looking pretty good right now, and God is not happy with them.
Guess you could call them the Fantastic Four.
They could be the Fantastic Four. There you go. Yeah, that would work. But God's not happy with them.
The Israelites.
Yes, no, he's not happy with the Israelites. They are not coming out too well, and he's definitely wanting to distance himself from them. But he has a covenant, so you have to remember that. And also there is a land. He had land, seed, and blessing. And so there is a land that he has promised them, which is part of the covenant. So
yeah,
those are good things to remember.
And this is really cool because we just went through Exodus 34.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen that video, go back and rewatch it. Yeah. But we just talked about this earlier today, so it's really fresh on my mind. Mm. This really has a lot of parallels with that. But what I love, and just reading through it, this made me just kind of smile really big. Mm. In Exodus 34, Moses had turned to God and said, I'm leading these people and I'm all alone.
Oh, yeah.
And here God's given him 3 other people, right? And once again, it's not that things have gotten better. He just now has 3 other people to cry with him.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's not like, now he has friends and everything's going well. No, they're still having a tough time being leaders, but now he's not suffering in isolation, right? And I just think that's kind of sweet, and we see God's Hesed shining through even there, right? I mean, like Moses in 34, he was like, God, I'm all alone. Like, I'm leading these people, and they're stiff-necked, and, like, it's hard. And now he's got Aaron, and he's got Joshua, and he's got Caleb, and that's just really cool. Mm-hmm. That was a little thing in the background. I was like, oh, that's sweet. Yeah. But it is very similar, right? And so here we have the 12 spies have returned from the land of Canaan, and they say, these people are giants. We stand no chance against them. We have no fighting chance. We're just a group of slaves. They have armies. They have walled cities. They have these giant grapes. Like, what are we going to do? Yeah. And they come back, and everybody's terrified. Mm-hmm. And the Israelites are saying, you know what, screw it. Let's go back to Egypt. Mm-hmm. Which is heartbreaking because, I mean, this isn't that long afterwards, right? They haven't been sentenced to 40 years yet. This is like about 2 years afterwards, I believe. Mm-hmm. It's been 2 years since they saw what God did. Like, God literally, like it's like, wow, how quickly you forget, and how quickly you begin to almost like idolize the past because you're suffering for a little bit in the present.
And we do the same thing.
I mean, yeah, we all do the same thing, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, we have situations that we've escaped from by the grace of God, and then we look back on those being like, man, I wish I was back there. And it's just heartbreaking because God's like, no, I delivered you from that. Mm-hmm. I think as Christians we do that a lot, right? Oh, yeah. We like look at people who are living in their sin, and we're like, man, I wish I could just go do that. I wish I could just embrace every single desire. And God's like, no, I sent my son to die for you so you didn't have to do that. That's who you were before, and you're different. Like, you came to me for that reason, yet for some reason we still long for it, and it's ridiculous. Yeah. But, so yeah, we don't want to, like, every time you point a finger at somebody, you got, like, 3 fingers pointing back. Yeah. And so, yeah. These people are like, oh, we want to go back to Egypt. And then Keith Green cuts in, and he's like, so you want to go back to Egypt? Yeah. Yeah. It's a really good song. You really should go listen to it.
It is great.
So they say, let's appoint a leader and return to Egypt. And that's sad once again, because Moses is the leader, and we've seen how good a leader Moses is. Mm-hmm. And it really is heartbreaking when you also just think about how often, like Moses is not an exception here. Most of the leaders, the faithful leaders throughout the Bible, are rejected by the people.
Samuel.
Right? Samuel's going to be rejected by the people. Moses is rejected by the people. David is actually going to be the one person who is somewhat accepted by the people, but he's still going to have a tough time because he messes up a lot. Yeah. And a lot of people are going to reject him. Mm-hmm. But then Jesus, I mean, hello. Right. Jesus is going to be rejected by the people. Most of the prophets are rejected by the people. The apostles are rejected by the people. And that's why the prosperity gospel thing just doesn't work. You can't say that God wants every single person to just have a great time in this life. Yeah. Because, I mean, most people who do stuff for him do not have a fun time, a lot of it. But they realize that it's worth it for him. Yeah. Right? And so they're saying, let's replace Moses, let's appoint another leader, and let's go back to slavery. Let's undo everything God's done for us. Yeah. Very heartbreaking stuff. And so Moses and Aaron fall on their faces. They cry out to God. Joshua, son of Nun, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, they cry out too. These are the 2 spies who were actually faithful. And they said, guys, it's not about how big our army is. It's how big our God is. Come on. Mm-hmm. And they said to the whole community, the land we pass through to investigate is exceedingly good. If the Lord delights in us, he will bring us into the land and give it to us, a land that's flowing with milk and honey. They're like, guys, if God is happy with us, and if we are serving him with all our hearts, we got this. Because it's not about us. It's about him. It's not about how many swords we have. It's not about how big their walls are. It's about how big our God is and how much faith we have in him. That's the key. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not fear the people of the land, for they are bread for us. If you fear them, we do stand no chance. Yep. right? It's kind of like something that we always talked about whenever I used to do karate. Whenever you were breaking a board or even a brick, right? You had to believe you could do it, right? If you had any doubt, you weren't going to do it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what they're saying here, but it's actually got theological backing.
Right.
Usually ours was just like a self-motivation thing. But no, like, you have to believe God can do it.
Yeah.
If you doubt him, you're going to lose. You've got to trust in God, and he will deliver you.
Yeah.
Their protection is turned aside from them, but the Lord is with us. Do not turn from them, right? Their walls, they're not going to do any good, right? Their swords, they're not going to do any good. God is with us. Let's go take them on. However, the whole community threatened to stone them. Yikes. Like, that's so sad. You have these people who are being faithful to God saying, trust in God. Trust in the one who delivered you from Egypt. Yeah. And they're wanting to kill them. But it's not the last time we're going to see that either. Once again, the prophets, Jesus, Jesus got threatened to be stoned as well.
That's true.
Stephen, the first martyr, he was stoned by the people because he called them to trust in God. But the glory of the Lord appeared to the Israelites at the tent of meeting. God shows up on the scene.
Yeah.
He's like
hold on
back
a second.
off, right? The Lord said to Moses, how long? You can, like, that's a phrase you see a lot in the Old Testament. Sometimes people are speaking it to God, but sometimes God's speaking it to the people. And he says to Moses, how long will this people despise me? How long will they not believe in me in spite of the signs that I've done among them? You feel the heartbreak. You feel the anger. You feel the frustration. You feel all of the different emotions just in those phrases, right? Yeah. He's sad. He's angry. He's annoyed. He's slow to anger, but man, sometimes that it's at the brim. These people test it, right? He's very slow to anger, but shoot, do these people test it. I mean, he's done so much for them. And once again, they have no right to expect any of it from him. Right? He didn't have to do any of it, and now they're wanting to undo all of the stuff he did. Right? This is like a dad who gives his reckless son a shiny red Corvette convertible.
Yeah, first car.
Yeah, and the son's like, yeah, I'd actually like to go sell this and buy some drugs instead. And the dad's like, oh my gosh, you are the worst child ever. Yeah. Like it's kind of like, that's how God's feeling right now. He says, I will strike them with pestilence and disinherit them. Heartbreaking. Like, this is the God who made the covenant to Abraham, and he says, you know what? I'm reaching my breaking point. I will disinherit them. I know what I said to Abraham, but you know what? I can fulfill that through you. I can fulfill it through Abraham. I can fulfill it, through Aaron. Yeah. I can fulfill it through y'all. Y'all are descendants of Abraham. Let's just start anew. I will make you into a nation that's greater and mightier than they. Right? You know what? I'll make you bigger and better. Right? Moses and Aaron and all of them, they have everything to receive this. Oh, I can be more popular? Ooh, that'd be great. I could be a nation in and of myself. Instead of being the land of Israel, it would be the land of Moses. Ooh, it's tempting, right?
Yeah. Also, this is sad because we see the digression of, like, the Israelites, and it looks, this specific situation, just those two verses, reminds me a lot of, like, the flood with Noah. Whenever God is like, I'm gonna wipe all the people away in Noah, I'm gonna start out with you and the 8 people that are on this ark. Y'all are gonna be the ones I'm gonna start over with. And it's kind of the same mentality or the same thing that he's kind of saying here. Yeah.
And we saw it again in Exodus too.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, this is literally like, in a 2-year time span, God has had to like suggest this multiple times.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, it's almost like God and Moses just meet up and God's like, oh, Moses, I am right there with you, man. Like, I am this close to destroying these people. I am slow to anger, but man.
You tested.
They are really speeding me up. And so Moses and God, they both understand this, right? And God says, you know what? I'm going to start over again with you. And now we see the responses. And this is where we're going to see Hesed show up. Moses said to the Lord, when the Egyptians hear it, for you brought up this people by your power from among them, then they will tell it to the inhabitants of this land. They have heard that you, Lord, are among this people, that you, Lord, are seen face to face, that your cloud stands over them, and that you go before them by day in a pillar of cloud and a pillar of fire by night. If you kill this entire people at once, then the nations that have heard of your fame will say, because the Lord was not able to bring this people into the land that he swore to them, he killed them in the wilderness. So now, let the power of my Lord be great, just as you have said. The Lord is slow to anger and abounding in hesed, forgiving iniquity and transgression, but by no means clearing the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children until the 3rd and 4th generations. Please forgive the iniquity of this people according to your great hesed, just as you have forgiven this people from Egypt even until now. Then the Lord said, I have forgiven them as you asked. But truly as I live, all the earth will be filled with the glory of the Lord. For all the people have seen my glory and my signs that I did in Egypt and in the wilderness, and yet have tempted me now these 10 times, and have not obeyed me. They will by no means see the land that I promised on oath to their fathers, nor will any of them who despised me see it. Only my servant Caleb, because he had a different spirit and has followed me fully, I will bring him into the land where he had gone, and his descendants will possess it. Now the Amalekites and the Canaanites were living in the valleys. Tomorrow, turn and journey into the wilderness by the way of the Red Sea. And so, this is all setting up the punishment of the 40 years in the wilderness, and only Caleb and Joshua. Joshua is not mentioned here, but Caleb and Joshua are going to be the ones entering into the land. Yeah. But here it is. Here is our final 2 occurrences in the book of... Well, it's our only 2 occurrences in the book of Numbers. Our final 2 for this video. What do you think about the little story we have here?
Yeah. Moses, he just comes out looking really good. If there's any way to kind of bargain with God, he definitely shows the good way to do it by appealing to his glory, because we all know that everything that God does is for his glory. So if he's able to kind of show God, hey, if you do this, your glory isn't going to be shown to not only the Israelites, but also all of the people around who are looking towards us, because the Israelites are meant to be set apart from the people that are around them. So they already stick out if they're following the laws, right? They already stick out compared to the people around them. And so everyone's kind of looking towards them. I mean, they have special garments they wear with like little tassels at the bottom. They have specific things that they do, specific things they don't do, what they eat, what they don't eat. So people around know, oh, that's an Israelite. And, they worship that God. And so it's interesting how he's able to pull that in. And he specifically talks about whenever God revealed himself to him at Mount Sinai, and used the same wording that he did.
Yeah, and you can tell that Moses isn't just making this stuff up, right? This is not how somebody, like, if somebody's just trying to buy extra time or make something up, like, they don't word it like this. You see this all the time, right? This is always in movies or something, or even in real life, where somebody's like, God, if you save me right now, I'll go to church every single Sunday. Because that's not what God's looking for, right? God doesn't just want you to go to church every Sunday. God, if you do this, I'll read my Bible every single day. I'll give all my money to charity. That's not what he's asking for. He's asking for your heart. And Moses understands God's priorities. He's not saying, if you deliver us, we will follow your law perfectly, because that's not realistic, first off, and God knows that they're not going to do it. Instead, Moses knows what God really desires. And Moses has thought about this. And he thinks about things not just from his perspective. He thinks about this all about from God's glory perspective, right? That's the perspective. And he's thinking, hey, God, I've thought this through. And you know what? These people do deserve to be destroyed. I deserve to be destroyed. We all deserve to be destroyed. But the thing is, you identified yourself with us. And I know you care about your glory. I care about your glory. And I think that it would probably hurt your glory if you did this. And obviously God's going to always have the same amount of glory, but God's whole goal is to draw all the nations to him, right? That is God's goal. His commitment throughout the whole Bible is to draw people to himself. Later on, the Israelites are going to forget what Moses is saying here, and they're going to think, oh, Israel, we are special. We are the only people of God. Their whole existence was to draw others to God. And Moses is saying, hey, if you destroy this people aren't going to want to worship you, because they're going to say that you weren't big enough. And if they know that you just killed all these people, well, they're going to say, well, we don't want a God who's vindictive like that, because that's like every other God, right? So he's saying, God, think about this. If your goal is to draw all people to you, and if your goal is glory, you need to spare these people. And so Moses is thinking very deeply. He understands God, and that's why the more I study this stuff, I love Moses' character, because you actually do have this very good story arc. Like, just his character shifts. He's a very dynamic character. He's not static. He doesn't stay the same. He shifts over time, and he becomes this amazing leader that if you just study him, you're like, wow, like, this guy gets it. And like you mentioned, he brings up the Exodus 34 thing, the thing we talked about last week. Like, he remembered those words. And he draws them up right now, and he says, God, this is who you said you are. I'm holding you to it. It's like, whoa, bold move, but it works.
Also, I think it's important to note that he didn't just quote the first half of it, where it's just talking about his Hesed. He quotes the entire thing, which includes talking about their sin, their iniquity, their transgressions. So he's identifying, like, hey, the people have done wrong. We have sin. We, like, have this iniquity. We have these transgressions, but we're asking you to use your Hesed on those things, like you said you would, so that you could further be glorified to not only us, but also all the nations around us. So he doesn't just quote the first half to, like, use it for his benefit. He quotes the whole thing to be like, all of this, every single thing you said, this is it as a whole, not trying to just kind of pluck something out for his benefit.
No, it's all about, like, hey, God, I get you have a standard, and I get these people deserve to be destroyed, and I get that I deserve to be destroyed. I get that we all deserve it. Mm-hmm. But you did say you're a God of Hesed. Yeah. And so I'm asking you, can you stretch your Hesed out a little bit longer? Mm-hmm. Can you just, like you said, you're abundant in it, right? You said you're abounding. It's overflowing. Yeah. Let it overflow onto us, right? I get that we're outside the camp right now. I get that we do not deserve this, but please just shower us with your Hesed. Mm-hmm. So let's walk through this. Okay. Moses said to the Lord, when the Egyptians hear it, I love that this is his first thing he goes to, right? Yeah. He doesn't try to justify anything. He doesn't say, God, no, the people aren't that bad. Mm-hmm. Also, he immediately begins appealing on behalf of the people. Whereas God just said, he offered him, it's hard to refuse. Right. He says, hey, I'll destroy these people and I'll start over with you and you can be the leader, right? You can be the new Abraham. You can be the new Jacob, right? You can be the new patriarch. Mm-hmm. Right now, Moses is just he's from the tribe of Levi, who aren't even inheriting anything in the land. Mm-hmm. He's not from the tribe of Judah or anything. Yeah. Right? He's from a totally different tribe. And God's saying, I'll start over with you. That's tempting. Mm-hmm. But Moses doesn't fight for that. Yeah. Instead, he says no. He cares about the people. Yeah. When the Egyptians hear it, for you brought up this people by your power from among them. Right? You. Yeah. You're going to see how much he uses you here. Again. It's you, God. You did this for these people. When they will tell it then they will tell it to the inhabitants of the land. Right? So if you destroy these people, the Egyptians are going to go tell the Canaanites are going to tell everybody else, and everybody's going to know that Yahweh is a God who just kills people that he doesn't like. That doesn't set him apart from any other God. Mm-hmm. And I get that you have every right to, because you are the one true righteous God who deserves to show that wrath, but it kind of goes against your goal of drawing all people to yourself.
Mm-hmm. And the main reason that was repeated over and over again in Exodus as to why they were needing to leave Egypt was so they could go into the wilderness to worship God. Yeah. And so if this kind of circulates around, they're like, he brought them into the wilderness. Like, I thought they were supposed to, like, worship him. Like, is this what happens whenever you worship Yahweh? Yeah.
Well, and it confirms what the Israelites were saying. Has he taken us out here to kill us? Right. Yeah. Yeah. And Moses is like, hey, people know why you brought them here. Mm-hmm. We didn't make that a secret. We made it clear that it was about you. Yeah. And so you probably don't want to do this. Mm-hmm. And once again, God anticipates this, right? I mean, God knows. I mean, he made the promise that there's going to be a king who comes from Judah back in the book of Genesis, right? Yeah. And so God knows Moses is going to do this, but I think he's setting up this opportunity for Moses to demonstrate his leadership skills and his care for the people, because he's setting an example for all future leaders. Yes. So he says, then they'll tell it to the inhabitants of this land. They have heard that you, Lord, are among the people, and that you, Lord, are seen face to face, that your cloud stands over them, right, talking about on Mount Sinai, and that you go before them day by day in a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. Mm-hmm. Like, everybody knows that you have identified yourself with these people. Yeah. You, Yahweh, are the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and everybody's heard of this. Mm-hmm. And this is true. Whenever we get to the book of Samuel, the Philistines are going to be like, hey, isn't that the God? Yeah. Like they know who this God is, just like we know that Dagon is I want to say another joke. I'm not going to say it. Okay. Dagon is the god of the Philistines, right? Mm-hmm. We know all the different gods of Egypt. We know the gods of the Canaanites. We know like Baal, Ashtaroth, all these different people. They know that Yahweh is the God of Israel. Yeah. He says, God, they know this stuff. You have identified yourself with this. You can't back off now. You might want to, but you can't. Mm-hmm. If you kill this entire people at once, then the nations that have heard of your fame will say, because the Lord was not able to bring this people into the land that he swore to them, he killed them in the wilderness. Mm. So they're going to say about you, oh, you took them out of Egypt, but you couldn't get them into Canaan, and because you were afraid, because you were scared, because you didn't have the power, you decided to just kill these people off. Mm-hmm. Is that going to draw them back to you, God? Yeah. That's going to discredit everything about you. That's going to make them think that you're no better than any other God, because their gods fail them all the time. But you haven't failed yet. Mm. And he's saying, like, yeah, I get it. You just, like, you would be justified in this. Right. And you know what? If you did it, yes, your name would be defamed in front of everybody else, but guess what? You don't need those people. But Moses knows God's priorities.
Yeah.
He says, I know that you care about your glory, and I know that you care about drawing the nations to yourself. So I'm going to ask you, reconsider. So now, let the power of my Lord be great, just as you have said. Right? Let the power of my Lord be great, just as you have said. And now he starts quoting God back to himself. Hey, remember how like a year ago you said this to me? I'm going to say it right back at you. The Lord is slow to anger and abounding in Hesed. Hey, remember that? You said slow to anger, abounding in Hesed. Well, you seem like you're getting angry, and you seem like you're about at the end of showing your Hesed. So I'm going to remind you of those attributes. You said that's who you are. Forgiving iniquity and transgression. Right? Forgive these people's iniquity and transgression. You said that that's what you do. But by no means clearing the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the father on the children till the third and fourth generations. So what he's saying here is he's setting up what God's going to do. He says, God, I get it. You like showing grace, but you do have a standard.
Yeah.
So don't destroy these people. But if you have to punish them, that's fine. Right? Don't wipe them out. Don't start again with me. Don't make my name great. But I get it. You do have a standard. If you have to punish the people, so be it. Yeah. And so he's kind of compromising here. He's being a classic Hebrew, right? He's bargaining. He's doing what Abraham did.
Yeah.
Very similar to Abraham, right? He's fighting on behalf of the people just like Abraham fought on behalf of the people of Sodom, right? He's like, hey, God, I get it. I understand. But please, err on the side of Hesed, right? Like lean towards Hesed rather than the Emet part, right? Yeah. I get it. I know that you're both, but show grace. Yeah. Show your loving kindness. This is the positive version of Hesed. This is the Hesed that makes us warm and cozy inside rather than the one in Leviticus. Yeah. Right? This is good Hesed. Please forgive the iniquity of this people according to your great Hesed. Right? He calls it great in this instance. Right? Your great Hesed. Just as you have forgiven the people from Egypt even until now. He says, God, you've been with us this far. And these people, this is not the first time the people have messed up. Yeah. They have messed up multiple times, as we're going to see, 10 times. God's like, oh, I've been counting. I know how many times I showed them. And Moses is like, I get it. They've been messing up, and you have been showing them Hesed upon Hesed upon Hesed. I'm asking you to just show it one more time. And next time they mess up, I'm going to ask you to show it one more time, then two. And then one more time, then one more time, then one more time. This is just a great leader. Moses is just absolutely fantastic in this moment, and these are the two occurrences of Hesed in Numbers. I do want to kind of cover these last few verses because they're going to set up the context of our next discussion in Deuteronomy. But is there anything else you want to say about just how Hesed shows up here?
Yeah, I think it's cool that Moses, well, like we said, he just really understands who God is, and it's just interesting how he doesn't mention Emet here, but you see, woven in the words that he's saying, that he's honoring both sides of God's characteristics. He honors the side of his Hesed, but he also realizes, God is righteous.
He's holding the tension.
Yeah, and he understands that, he is the one who establishes justice. So he can do whatever he wants, but he's trying to appeal to this side of Hesed because he knows he has this gracious, loving heart inside of him.
Yeah, and he knows that's what God wants to do.
Yeah.
Right? He's like, God, I get it.
Remember it.
Yeah, I know that you're mad at these people, but I know you didn't pick them for no reason.
Yeah.
You chose them because you love them, and you want to do this, and you want to draw people to you. Yeah. And I get it that you would, you could do that again through me. Right? You could start again through Moses and make the people of Moses, and you could push it off.
Yeah.
But you've already got this thing set in motion. You've already given them your law. Let's stick to it. Yeah. Let's just let's just not give up on them quite yet. If you have to punish them, that's fine. I get it. You're entitled to that. You're entitled to killing us all. I'm just asking you to show Hesed. If you have to punish to the third and fourth generation, okay. But just show Hesed. Yeah. And what we're going to see is that God isn't punishing to the third and fourth generation. He's going to punish one generation. Yeah. Right? He's going to punish the guilty party. Yeah. And their descendants are going to go in, right? That's really cool. So he's showing Hesed, right? First off, it's showing Hesed even if he punished the third and fourth generation. But instead, he's going to say, okay, this generation will die here. And that's what he says. Yeah. Then the Lord said, I have forgiven them as you asked. It was that easy. Yeah. Right? Moses I didn't see him offer any sacrifices or anything. Yeah. Interesting, right? You have all these sacrifices, but Moses doesn't do this. Moses prays. And he says, God, these people are sinful. Forgive them. And by that one intercession, he saves the people. I've forgiven them as you asked, but truly, as I live, all the earth will be filled with the glory of the Lord. Right? I feel like the word and is probably better there. And truly as I live.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Because he's saying, yes, you're right. amen. Like you just see God saying amen to what Moses is saying. He's like, yes, you're spot on, man.
That's what I was looking for.
Yes, that is exactly it. Like, you have unlocked the key to being a good leader. You're interceding on behalf of the people, but you're not straying from God's priorities, right? That's an issue. Sometimes biblical leaders and Christian leaders, or just, just religious leaders, they care so much about the people that they forget what God really cares about, right? You have to have both of those in mind. You have to care so deeply about what God cares about that you care for God's people, right? And Moses gets that. And God's like, yes, absolutely. Because of what you've said, and because you understand me so well, I have forgiven the people, because I do want the glory to happen, because I do want all people to be drawn to me. And you're right. We do have this people. I have delivered them from Egypt. We have a good thing going. Let's keep it going.
Yeah. And we also see this is kind of a consistent interaction between Moses and God, because in the last video that we did in Exodus 34, whenever he's saying, like, if it's between the land and being with you, I would rather be with you than for you to take us into the land. Like, I'd rather be in your presence. And God's like, my presence will be with you. Like, he immediately gives Moses the stamp of approval. My presence will be with you. You don't have to worry. You can rest. And so we see kind of that same interaction here where God talks to Moses. He's showing him his heart and showing him, what he truly desires. And God's like, yes, I approve. That's what I want.
Moses is just a superstar.
No,
he's great. He's fantastic.
Good.
Yeah. For all the people have seen my glory and my signs that I did in Egypt and in the wilderness, and yet have tempted me now these 10 times and have not obeyed me. God's like, I have literally been counting, and I'm all out of fingers. Like, he's like, I
have to move to
10
toes.
times. And if you go in Numbers, you actually see all the different times that God's done this. You might have to look at Exodus as well, but there are 10 times. They will by no means see the land that I promised on oath to their fathers. He says, like, I'm sorry, I can't allow these people in. These people, they have tested me. They are ungrateful. They would not appreciate the land if they went in. So they're not going to make it. By no means. Nor will any of them who despised me see it. Those who rejected me, they're not going to get it either. This land is meant for people who will actually appreciate it. Right? This gift is for those who will actually treasure it. Only my servant Caleb, because he had a different spirit and followed me fully. And we're going to later on see that Joshua also is going to go in, right? Because these two, they went in the land and they said, God's got this. This is a plentiful land. It's flowing with milk and honey, and God's going to give it to us. And those people are excited about it. And he says, so those people, they're going to go in. I will bring him into the land where he had gone, and his descendants will possess it. And then it says, now the Amalekites and Canaanites were living in the valleys, and that's just kind of giving us, by the way, at that time period, other people were living in the land, right? It's not like they were just going into empty land to possess it. Like, there were people there, and there's going to be a battle, right? There's going to be a lot of fights in order to attain this. And then he says, tomorrow, turn and journey into the wilderness by way of the Red Sea. And they're going to start making their way there, right? And they're going to eventually, go into the promised land. But as we see here, there is going to be a 40-year waiting period, right? And that kind of is, I guess that's a kind of a good place to end off right here. And next time we will be going into Deuteronomy, and we're going to be spending all our time just in Deuteronomy. And with that, we'll be wrapping up the Torah. We've got 3 occurrences in Deuteronomy. One of them is in chapter 5, and the other 2 are back-to-back in chapter 7. And then we'll be done with the Torah. We'll take a little bit of a break. And then we'll be right back at it. And honestly, I'm excited to go through it more, because I'm really, really enjoying this study. We were talking about this, actually, in between filming these 2 videos, because we went and did some other stuff. We went on, like, a long bike ride and all this different stuff. I've been a little bit of a chill day today. But we were talking about it, and I'm just really enjoying going through this series just on a personal level. Even if nobody watches these videos, I'm enjoying this.
We're learning stuff.
And I honestly, I'm enjoying even going back and rewatching these videos afterwards to reprocess how these words are showing up, because it's just very fun. It's like we're getting to go through an overview of the whole Bible with our eyes specifically searching for one concept and seeing how that concept shapes over time and really how that concept shapes our view of the Bible. And I'm really enjoying it. And so I hope you are too.
I love it. I like it a lot. It's really cool.
But so do you have anything else you want to say about our occurrences of Hesed in Leviticus and Numbers before we start wrapping up?
I don't think so.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you once again for joining me.
Yeah.
And thank you all once again for watching this. Really appreciate it. If there's anything else you wanted to mention or questions you had, anything like that, be sure to drop them in the comments below.
Yes.
We love reading your comments, and either one of us will respond. Maybe, if you're lucky. I'm kidding. We usually try to respond to those. And once again, if you want access to the slides, you can get those at nowletsbehonest.com/resources. And if you want to support us on Patreon, which I would really appreciate, you can do that at patreon.com/David Tate. But by no means feel obligated. It would simply be your act of Hesed towards us. I actually originally wanted to name the different tiers, like different words for like love and stuff. I was thinking like you do like phileo, agape, and like Hesed or something.
Yeah.
But I didn't end up doing that. I just named it like silver and gold or something. I don't even know what I named
Bronze,
it.
silver, gold.
But yeah, so thank you so much for watching this. Really appreciate y'all, and thank you for joining us on this. This video, like this is just a passion project.
Yeah.
We know going into this that this series is not going to get as many views as like my chosen related videos or anything. That's totally fine. Yeah. We are purely doing this because we think it's important and we want more people to talk about this. And it's just fun. And we figured, while we're doing it, might as well record it and throw it out there so it can bless somebody else. But
we're in it for the long haul.
Yeah,
it's
in
gonna
it
be a while.
for the long haul. There's
a lot of occurrences.
Yes. So, pray for us. But yeah, okay. So thank you so much, and I'll stop talking now. Be sure to keep a smile on your face. Don't let anybody steal your joy. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and get all of your friends and family doing that as well. And we'll see y'all next time.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
You read a verse, you sing a hymn, the money's in the plate. Sundays you mark out for him, but even then you show up late. You bought the shirt, you wear the cross, but sin throughout the week. For 30 shekels and a noose, you kiss him on the cheek.